Welcome to this live. This is the final live in the series, Build Your Brand Foundation. And I'm going to be sharing with you how I built 3 successful brands from scratch. And the craziest thing about all of this is that I didn't even realize that I built 3 successful brands until recently. And what is so amazing about this is that I've learned a lot of lessons. And the other thing is that have done this all alone. All alone meaning I didn't have a big budget, I didn't have a team, I didn't have a coach, I didn't have a mentor until long after. So I'm sharing that story tonight as like a chit chat as you come in. Just introduce yourself, tell me where you're joining from, and of course, share where are you on your brand building journey. Are you in the ideation stage? Are you in that stage of just launching? Or are you in that stage of why, I'm established, I've built a brand, I need some systems. Or you could be established and you feel like everything is perfectly fine. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing some lessons, some missteps, some wins, and what I would do differently if I'm building my brand today. Of course, I built my very first brand over 14 years ago, probably 15 years ago, if I should say. And all of them were, 2 of them mainly were in my early 20s. So because you're here for the story, I won't take too long. So as you jump in, just, come in, tell me where you're from, where are you on your brand journey, and what you're really looking forward to hearing tonight as I share my brand journey. So if you're watching the replay, of course, I'd love for you to comment that as well. So let me just share a little bit. So I'm going to be sharing the real story behind each of these 3 brands that I've built, the mistakes that I've made that has cost me time, money, and of course, some amount of confidence, what I learned, what I'll do differently, and what you can learn from my journey. All right. So let's jump into it. But let me just remind you, this is the third one, which means I have a link in the description to the 2 previous videos that I did before this. All right. So let me share my screen and we are going to just get into the meat of the matter and all the exciting things here. All righty. While you're here, while you're watching, while you're waiting. Yes. All right. So I title it as what they don't share. And what they oftentimes don't share is that there's a lot of failures that happen. There's a lot of missteps, I would say, that happen behind the scenes when building a brand. And I'm no stranger to that. So this isn't just a success story. It's a lesson story on building 3 successful brands from scratch. And as I said earlier, this is the third one in the series. So let's talk about it. The mistakes or the lessons I would say I've learned is that, one, there were some expensive mistakes that cost me time. And the reason why it cost me a lot of time was because I didn't have a clear roadmap to building my brand. So compared to now where you can just go on YouTube and Google how to build a brand from scratch, at that time I had to be reading blog posts, long blog posts, multiple blog posts, or I have to purchase books. And oftentimes those books would be titled How to Build a Brand from Scratch. It's like how to build a business, how to make this amount of money in your business, how to scale, all those things. And I really and truly, I wasn't at that point. All I really wanted to do was to build a brand. And if I'm going to be honest, I wasn't even thinking about building a brand at the time. So all of that, not having clarity from the beginning, cost me a lot of time and even money, because when I eventually came into making money, where I pulled money from my 9 to 5, I pulled money from my side also. I started spending it on subscriptions. I started paying for courses. I started investing here and there just because I wanted to be clear on what I was building or wanted to be better on what I was building. And then because I wasn't clear, because I didn't have a roadmap, it also dampened my confidence a bit. And I'm going to share a bit more as I share all these stories. And one of the other things about this is that I've learned a lot of lessons because I had to rebuild more than once. Not because I wanted to rebrand, but because the foundation was not set right, or the foundation wasn't very solid from the beginning. And then the other thing is that I had to figure it out as I went along. And we know when you're figuring it out alone, again, that costs you a lot of time. All right. So for years, I would call these brands that I'm building experiments, side hustles, or things I tried. I really did not look at them as me building a brand. It took me a very long time before I actually called them what they were. The brands that I built, it took a little while. And the first one that I built was a fashion blog. Then the other one I built was a women's community. And the third one is Carey Digital. A lot of you know me under the brand Carey Digital. Some of you were introduced to me by my women's community. And very few people know me from the days of me having a fashion blog. But you're going to be hearing that story tonight. But here's just a little bit. In my early 20s, fresh out of university, like most of us are when we leave university, or most of us are when we leave high school, we are so passionate. We're ready to make some money. We're ready to just dive into the world of adulthood. But for me, my transition wasn't so easy. I spent a lot of my earlier months right after university job hunting. So I was job hunting, trying to find a job, sending out resumes, sending out cover letters. I had my little tracker writing notes, and I was not getting any response. I was sending all of these applications, no response. Because I wasn't getting a response, and because at the time I was like, I had to do something, I thought about what's the easiest way I could make some money while I'm job hunting. And I thought I could buy and sell fashion accessories because I loved fashion accessories. And so that was the first thing I started doing, which brought me into me building my first fashion blog that changed a lot of things. So because of 6 months of job rejections, I built something instead based on the interest that I had, and that was fashion accessories. So here's a little bit about that. Started buying the fashion accessories, started selling them, but the sales were really slow. Let me tell you, if I can remember very clearly, I probably sold 2 pieces. If my memory serves me correct, I think only 2 pieces, which was like one of those skinny belts that I was wearing during that time, and I sold a necklace. I saw probably some other pieces here and there, but really the sales were slow. I wasn't making back my money, simply put. And so I thought, how can I get people to buy my accessories? And the lucky thing for me at the time was that blogging was really trending. It was a big thing at the time. And so I decided, you know what? I am going to start a blog. And so I started this blog called Exclusive Oomph. So this is what one of the very first logos look like. It's a fashion accessories blog. I like to always say it's the first fashion accessories blog in the Caribbean, in Jamaica. There was no one else in the space at the time talking about fashion accessories or even had a blog dedicated to it. There were a lot of blogs at that time that was really hot, but I had a fashion accessories blog, and that's how I stood out. And of course, one of the success stories from this brand is that I won Best New Blog Awards. But if you realize just from these images, the colors and everything that I was using just was based on my own liking, what I thought looked good. And because I have graphic designing background, at this time I didn't even understand branding. I didn't even understand the concept of who I was targeting. I was just saying, listen, anyone who loves fashion accessories, they are the person I am targeting. And so that is what I was doing. So this is my first brand that I built, which started with a Facebook page because I was selling fashion accessories and I wanted them to get sold. And then the other thing that I did is that I won Best New Blog Awards. But there were so many things that happened beyond that. I created this blog, showed women how to wear these pieces confidently. And that started to become content. So I was just creating content all the time. All the time I was creating content. And I gained exposure that the job search didn't give me. And I won best new blog awards. And then one of the most powerful things for me at the time too was that I started learning new skills, content creation, writing, audience building, storytelling. Those were the things I started to do, even interviewing skills, because one of the things about me, I wasn't even showing or putting myself out there as much, or even pretty much I wasn't showing myself. The blog wasn't new about me. It was me highlighting others and how they could wear the pieces. So I started to learn storytelling skills, interview skills, content creation, just writing and getting better. And if I'm going to say it very clearly, like, I didn't even think much about it other than I was just enjoying what I was doing and really occupying my time while I was building this brand. But the biggest success for me from this was acquiring the skills and getting the recognition as blog, new blog. All right. Now, the second brand that I built was one that was formed out of a need. Now, this brand is where I would definitely say I identified not only my purpose, but really challenged me to step outside of my comfort zone. And this brand is called For Women to Women. Not sure how many of you have heard about For Women to Women, but this brand is one that really challenged me. And here's how it challenged me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this brand. When I started this brand, little after I started the fashion accessories brand, I was working as an intern. So I got an internship job at the time. And because I got the internship job at the time, I was new into this work world. I wasn't sure how to navigate it. And I was like, you know what? I want to find communities for women in their 20s like me who are growing, navigating the career and want to grow. And trust me, I could not find any of that in the space. If they existed, I didn't know where to find it. I was going to all these events, all these women events, but I was not finding anything for women like me who wanted a space to learn, a space to grow, and to connect. So guess what I did? I created it. Being the person I am, I created it. And that was just natural for me. I'm naturally a creative person. I have the design skills and I started creating. And of course, I loved writing. I knew about social media. I was learning about social media at the time. I created a Facebook page. And in the middle here is the Facebook page, one of the first Facebook page. I think I created one before, then deleted it because I wasn't so sure. Then I went back and create one. But this is what the first logo looked like. And the name at the time was Woman to Woman. Again, look at the branding. I thought, okay, it's woman. I'm going to use the color pink. So I use different color shades of pink, right? Just thinking. And then from that, I created that Facebook page, but it soon and very quickly evolved into a blog, right? It transformed into a blog, started writing. But one of the things I knew at that time was that I really couldn't do all of it on my own. But at the same time, I didn't have a team. So one of the things that I did here was to, one, start identifying and reaching out to women who could contribute to this blog. And the women who I reached out to were just different parts of the world. Women in the US, women in the UK, women in Jamaica, women in different Caribbean islands. I was just on the internet reaching out to people saying, hey, I'm creating this blog. I've created this blog. I'd love for you to contribute. These women said yes. 12 women said yes. I got a lot of no's. I got a lot of questions like, is this a paid opportunity? I was like, this is just a community blog. This is me just creating a space of women to share their knowledge, share their experience, and share their journey. 12 women said yes. And so we started out with the blog creation. But one of the things that was holding me back at the time was that I was hiding behind the scenes, right? And if you follow me here on YouTube, you would realize that I talk a lot about this. If you follow me on any social, as part of my stories, that I was really hiding behind the scenes for a very long time, even though I was building this platform, even though I was building this community. And I remember just, that time I transitioned. Before, I think I jumped in the gun a little. After I transitioned to the blog, I transitioned to start doing Twitter chats, right? Twitter chat was a thing that time, I think between 2015 thereabout. We're doing Twitter chats. So similar to how you're seeing on the screen, you have like screenshots of persons engaging. So I'd reach out as well to speakers like, hey, I love you to be a part of this engagement. I love you to be a part of this thing that I'm doing. And a lot of women would say yes to me and they would come on. I'm talking about some big names in the game, right? But again, I was hiding behind the scenes while I was doing all of this. And I remember at one particular time, there was someone who reached out to me. I will never forget that person, but I won't call out her name right now. And she said, "Hey, Carey, we're loving these Twitter chats, but we really love to get you. We'd love to have like a gathering in person. Guys, I was like, boy, I don't know if I can do this because one, at the time, I feel like I have so much social anxiety. I don't want to be out and, in the space and stuff. I really like to be behind my screen and behind my computer just engaging. But that one question really challenged me to step outside of my comfort zone. The person asked me, can we do a meetup? Instantly, I said yes in my mind, even though I was like, terrified. And I remember hosting that first event. That first event was hosted in 2020, 2015. And I'm going to see if I can show you some photos from that gathering because I want you guys to see that. Right? So while I'm bringing that up, I want you to see some photos from that gathering. But yes, I did that gathering, and the first set of persons who joined that gathering were 10 women who wanted to connect, who wanted to meet in person. And those 10 women showed up, and those 10 women engaged. And after that first meetup, guys, I am telling you, there were so much magical things that happened because it's like a bug bite me, and all of a sudden I want to be doing more and more events. Oh, found it here. So let me share my screen with you. All right. See. All right. So this is the very first gathering that I had in 2015, May 2015 to be specific. Or maybe I was posting more here, I'm not sure. But between April and May, that's besides the point. This was the first gathering that I did. When I did this gathering, if you realize I'm standing all the way to the back because of how I didn't want to be in the spotlight. I was just like, this community is not about me. I'm creating it for these women, right? These are just some screenshots. This is from the Facebook page. These are the images captured. All of this is from that very first time of me saying yes. And these photos are also just, screenshots from the blog post graphics. And one of the things that I had to do at the time as I was evolving was also investing, right? So while I was doing a lot of things on my own, at some point I realized that I had to start investing in my brand, which meant I had side hustles going on and I started investing in branding. So as much as I had graphic designing skills, I was paying persons to also do my graphics, right? I paid someone, don't want to share the figure because that's not important, but I paid someone to create an entire brand or a brand identity, a visual brand identity for the brand at the time. And then I started investing in someone helping me to create graphics. So as much as I didn't have a big budget, I knew the importance of investing in my brand, right? And these are just some screenshots and photos from events I've hosted over the years. So let me share something else here with you that I think will be very valuable. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Ask me any questions, anything that you want to know while I was building this brand and what that was like. So I was building this brand. It evolved into all these events. So it moved from the first event in May. Then I went to New York because I had a community in New York. I started hosting events there. Then I went on and I did another event in December. So I'm going to share with you. So these are some other photos that I did in the December of in the same year, right? So I went on just doing different gatherings, building this brand. But before I reached this point, one of the big questions that I was asked at the time, so I was reaching out to a lot of persons, and one of the big questions I was asked at the time was, who are you building this brand for? And at the time, I was like, I'm building this brand for everybody, for every woman in her 20s. And I remember the person saying, Carey, I love what you're doing, but there's no way you can be building a brand for everyone because every woman in her 20s is not experiencing the same thing. Every woman in her 20s does not need what you're building. And that really made me step back a bit and start thinking about who am I building for? And I got very specific. I got so detailed to the point I'd say, I'm building this brand, or this is a community, sorry, this is a community and digital platform for women in their 20s. And I specifically remember saying millennial women, and sometimes I'd use women in their 20s and 30s who want to come. I don't remember exactly what it was, but just saying something about who wanted community and conversations in an authentic way. And the clearer I got was the more I started pulling or attracting the women who I wanted in the space. Not who just I wanted, but who needed what I was building at the time. This experience has been a life-changing one. Me being clear, me started to going back to the roots, gaining clarity, right? Identifying what I need. These were the things that helped me to build this brand. And I think that is one of the things that really helped this brand to stand out and to create such an impact at the time. But one of the things that happened while I was building this brand is that because I was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because I didn't have a team, and if I'm going to be so honest, when I was building it, I really still wasn't thinking about I'm building a brand, I'm building a brand. I was just building something out of just pure passion, purpose, drive. You know, that's all I was doing. I was just keep going and keep going. I was creating blog posts, I was managing social media. I was hosting these events alone alone. I didn't have a team. I didn't have a big budget. I just had audacity. I just had passion. I just had the purpose just burning in me. I just kept going. Of course, there were women in the community who could help me. There were people I could reach out to. But you see that thing called pride? You see that thing about being afraid to ask for help? I was struggling with that. Yeah, I was struggling with that. I was struggling with learning how to ask for help. I was struggling with just saying, hey, I want help. And, you know, when I felt like I got comfortable to a certain point, of course, I'd be like, hey, you know, I'm doing this event. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to get help. Do you know someone you could connect me to, kind of thing? Or women who are part of the community were seeing what I was building would be like, Carey, do you need help with anything? And that is when I would say yes. And the truth is, so many women are where I was building this vision, building this brand without help, building this vision, building this brand without a budget, building this vision, building this brand without structure, without a roadmap, without someone walking with them and guiding them. Guys, I had no mentor, I had no coach. All I was doing constantly was reading blog posts, learning how to build a brand, reading blog posts, how to build a community, and just implementing it at the time. And I think one of the things that really kept me going was because I had audacity. Know that when I pause and look back, I realized I had so much audacity. I didn't care who you were. Once I thought you were a great fit for the brand, I would send you an email. I would reach out to you on social media and say, hey, I'd love for you to be a part of this community. I'd love for you to speak. I'd love for you to do this. I'd love for you to do that. That is what I was doing. And I'm sharing this not because, boy, this was just it's a great story to tell. I'm sharing this because maybe you have the same purpose, maybe you have the same passion, but you don't have certain things in place like a system, like clarity, like structure, or someone to walk alongside you. And you know, I've created this offer called the Build Your Brand Live, a 5-day sprint. And when I thought about building this 5-day sprint, the one thing that came to me was, one, I'm talking a lot about branding. I'm talking a lot about how to be consistent with your brand and showing up and being consistent or confident on camera. And I started to feel a little bit hypocritical because if I'm going to be honest, a lot of the persons who work with me, a lot of women entrepreneurs who work with me, they have the resources to delegate. They have the resources to outsource. They have the resources to do all these things. But then I said, what about the women who don't have a big budget? What about the women who don't have a team? How can I walk alongside them? How can I walk alongside a woman who is willing to invest in her vision without her having a big budget? And so I came up with the Build Your Brand Live, the 5-day brand sprint, which will be hosted between March 10 and March 14 at 6 from so every evening for 5 days between the hours of 6 to 7 um 30 p.m. I'll be hosting this, right? And it is where I will be helping women each day to go in and focus on the brand clarity, right? Helping them to identify what you're building, who you're building it for. Then I go in on day 2 and I start talking about your brand identity. How do you want to show up? Then I go into day 3 and I look at how to create a system using Canva as a tool. Day 4, I go into content creation systems. Then day 5, which is the final day, we roll out with a 90-day visibility roadmap. Plus, you get workbook. Plus, you get the opportunity to learn from other women who will be joining this. This is what I'll be doing throughout this brand sprint. Of course, this is not an overnight thing because this is really where you're building the foundation of your brand. This is where you're learning from me. You're asking me questions. Boy, Carey, I am very new in this stage. I'm in the ideation stage. What can I start doing? How do I do it? And I walk with you hand in hand, right? Helping you for 5 nights, for 5 evenings, for 5 days. I am walking alongside you, right? So I'm not just sharing my story because it's nice or it's a success story. It sounds nice that, yes, I built 3 successful brands. It sounds nice, yes, that I've been able to, create content and do things to pull in my target audience. But the truth is, I was doing a lot of it alone. And at some point, guys, guess what I did? Because I was doing so much of the heavy lifting alone, I ended up aborting the mission. So as much as I talk boldly and confidently about how I built um for women to women as a brand that really gained a lot of success, do you know what happened to me? I had to abort the mission. I had to put it aside. I had to step away because I could not do much of it on my own anymore. And I know a lot of you are carrying very big visions, and that is something that I would want to know that I can help you with, and you have to do it alone. And so that is why I've come up with the brand sprint to help you. So the link is in the description, and you can get access to that. So let me continue with the story here. So what changed when I built for women to women? After transitioning from a blog, Facebook page to a blog, to a community, to in-person events, I got international exposure. So international exposure was one of the things that I got because I was invited to speak in India at the Women Economic Forum. So this was a big opportunity for me. At the time, I got invited to speak at the Women Economic Forum. I also got an award and was acknowledged at the time based on my work that I was doing with for women to women at the time. And I went to speak. And I don't want to talk too much about this, but one of the things that happened even when I went here was that I was no big speaker. I was so nervous. And if you check my YouTube, I think I'll link it in this description. I shared a video where I did my first live international speaking, and I was so nervous. But at the time, it was also a great way for me to step outside my comfort zone. So that was another success or something that changed when I built my brand for women to women. And then, of course, I got partnerships. I got partnerships. I got with women who became advisors, accountability partners. I got clients through what I was building. And also, it wasn't all about me. I gave other women a stage and the opportunities of their own. So women got the opportunity to come and to share their own stories. So I had a blog, right? I would interview women. I would feature them on my blog. I'm going to share with you that Instagram page, right? I interviewed women on my blog. I got opportunities that I could share with women. And eventually, one of the things that this blog or this platform transformed into let me share my screen here. One of the things that this platform transitioned or transformed into was really becoming a digital resources hub, right? So you would realize I featured women on the platform. I'd share their stories, right? That was one of the things that I started doing more of. So it moved from just creating a Facebook page, it moved from just, doing this blog or Twitter chats or me just getting international speakings and sponsorships and partnerships or in-person events. It eventually started to become a digital resources platform for women where they could gain opportunities, but also be featured to tell their stories and to connect and to learn from other women. So that's just a bit about my story on the second brand that I built. And let me talk now about the third brand that I built that many of you know about, which is Carey Digital. So I like to talk about this brand specifically because this was when I made the decision to stop hiding. Yeah, this was when I made the decision to stop hiding. This was when I was like really fed up with myself. At this point, I was like, no, man, I have to start showing up more on camera. And my number one goal at the time, or number two, I had two main goals: be more confident on camera, be more confident overall, and of course, to share more of what I knew with others. Of course, by this time, I have gained a lot of experience with years of learning design tools and brand strategy and content creation and community building and all of it. I was, despite having all that knowledge, I was hiding behind the work. And so when I made a decision to start putting myself more out there, that is when a lot of things also shifted. That is when you start knowing me about knowing me for being the Canva girl. You knowing me more about talking about branding. This is where a lot of things shifted. The minute I stopped hiding behind the scenes was when a lot of things transformed in my life personally and from a professional front. What changed? Everything I built, finally, I started showing up with it. I decided to share the knowledge that I, from the years of me learning, and that is even what I'm doing now as part of Carey Digital. Everything that I've learned from building the first brand to the second brand to this brand is something that I am sharing with you. And Carey Digital became the brand that brought the two other brands into full circle for me. But let's talk a little bit about what I would do differently. If there's anything that I would do differently about building a brand today, is number one, gain clarity. So I've touched on this on my first video as part of the series of building your brand foundation. Gain brand clarity. What does that even mean? What are you building? Who are you building it for, and why? The video that I did where I talked about 3 questions you should ask when you're building your brand will help you to get a very solid footing on how to build your brand, right? And then I am also sharing with you that one of the things I would also do differently is to walk hand in hand with someone. Sure, you might not have a big budget, you might not have a big team, but there's so much you can do on your own. There's so much DIYing and researching and watching YouTube videos and watching a live and events that you can go to. You have to find someone you can walk with. You have to find someone or a program, a course that you're willing to invest in, right? That will help you to take you from where you are to where you want to be. So even with Carey Digital, there have been a lot of things that I started doing a lot of on my own. And I realized I can't do it alone. I had to start reaching out to different entrepreneurs and saying, hey, I really need help. How do I do this? Many of you might not know, but if you know, I launched a new, I don't want to call it a brand because it's not a brand itself. It's a business. It's a new initiative called Creative Design Camp. I launched Creative Design Camp, and I'm going to pull that up here. I launched Creative Design Camp last year. This is actually the 4th brand that I'm building, right? So after Carey Digital, the next focus is the Creative Design Camp. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So last year, when I decided I'm going to do the Creative Design Camp, I was pushing out as much as I could. right? One of the things I was doing at the time was looking for events. I was looking for venues, could not find any venue, could not get any venues. People were taking so long to get back to me. Even before that, the minute I thought about the idea, I reached out to persons who I knew were in the space, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this camp. This is the vision. This is what I'm doing. Where do I start? How do I do this? And I was doing all the work behind the scenes. But guess what was happening? I wasn't getting any signups, right? Because one, I was late out the gate. Two, I had challenges with events, so I couldn't push out as much as I wanted to. And one of the things I had to do was to start asking, hey, can you connect me with a venue space? Can you do this? Can you do that? So one of the things I would say is you need to start finding or asking for help, right? As some of us have that little fear or that pride of not wanting to ask for help. Right? Sometimes I struggle with that still, right? But I have to step outside of myself and realize that this thing that I'm building is not just about me, right? And so the reason why I'm sharing a bit about the story about the creative camp is because 1 week before the camp was to go live, or the event date or the school camp date, I had zero signups. Zero signups. No one signed up for this camp, which meant the natural thing for me to do, of course, was to cancel the camp. The natural thinking thing for me to do at the time was that I was going to cancel the camp. But I could not cancel the camp. There was something deeper within me that knew I could not cancel the camp. What did I do? I did one of the most cringy things ever, which is going on the internet and asking for help. Not asking people for money, but asking for persons to help me to fill the room for this camp, right? I want to share with you the video. You might not play the audio, but I want to share it with you. I want to share with you this video. So this is the video that I created, right? This was right after I spoke to a parent. I said to her, listen, I want to do this camp, but I have zero signups. So if I get the one child, I don't know how that will be executed. We need more children. And I went on YouTube, on Instagram Live, and I started sharing the story behind me having zero signups. Do you know what happened after this? Do you know what happened? I got persons who decided, hey, Carey, I'm going to sponsor a child to be in the room. And the more persons start coming in, hey, Carey, I am going to donate this. I'm going to give this. I'm going to help you to do this. This was the power of me asking for help. So if there's anything I would definitely say about doing it differently this time around as I'm building a brand, is to get clear on what you're building, who you're serving, and who you're focusing on, what's the solution, but also finding someone who can help you to build that brand foundation, right? We need a brand foundation as we're building. So it's not just about just creating something and just running off with it, right? It is creating something with some amount of strategy, right? And I'm dropping this on the screen. So get clear on who you serve. And another thing that I want to share is that I will show my face from day one, not when I felt ready. And there's a reason to this. When you're building a service-based brand, one of the most powerful things you can do is to come on camera and to talk, to share your story, to share your journey of transformation, to share the power of what you're doing, to share the deeper why. And then the other thing I would say, to set up systems from the start. What are the systems you need to have in place as you're building that brand? Do you know how to utilize the colors and the logos that you're utilizing? You need to have systems. Do you have something that can run in the background when you should step away? Do you have a strategy? Do you have systems for content creation? What do you have in place to keep your brand growing and floating, even when you cannot show up as the solopreneur? Because the truth is, you're really not building that brand for you to be doing it as another 9 to 5 job. You're doing and you're building this brand and this business because it is something that should outlast, should have some amount of sustainability and hopefully some amount of legacy, right? Another thing that I would do differently is to treat visibility as a strategy, not something I get to later. And the reason why I mentioned this is that because Oftentimes I've seen these entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, would invest all this money into creating a logo, would invest all this money into creating nice colors, all the pretty things, all the nice graphics, but we don't have a strategy for visibility, right? And I'm not only talking about online, I'm talking about a visibility plan. Am I going to go to this event? Am I going to show up in this community? Am I going to post once a week? Am I going to go live? Do you have a strategy for visibility? Oftentimes I hear women entrepreneurs say, I'm afraid of being on camera. I don't like how my voice sounds. I don't like how I look. I don't have the perfect background. I don't have this. I don't have that. And I like to say, start where you are with what you have. When you're doing it alone, I know you don't normally have a big budget, but start where you are with what you have. I always like to share one of the very first photos I took when I started building my brand. I like to share that. You know why? Because I'm sharing that you don't need to have everything perfect before you start. I didn't even own a phone for myself at that time because my phone was damaged. So the phone I was using was not mine. In the earlier parts, probably like the first 3 months, that was not my phone I was recording on. That's the first time I'm sharing that publicly, right? So those are some of the things, like when you're building a brand. Of course, a lot of you are watching are not in that position where you probably don't have a phone, right? Or not in that position where you know, you probably don't have, I don't know, probably whatever that is. A lot of you might not be in a certain position where you can call it that things are the worst. Let's put it like that. So whatever you have, use it. Sometimes we feel like, but we need the latest device. But if you get the latest device, do you know how to use it? Or do you even have the discipline to get up every week and to utilize it or to create the content to position yourself, right? So you need to start thinking about, what can I do with what I have now, and take it from there. All right. What would I do differently? This is my last point before we wrap up. I'd give myself credit for what I'm building as I built. This is a very important part as well. Sometimes we're doing all this work and we're not giving ourselves any credit. You need to give yourself some credit. We need to stop being so hard on ourselves. I'm talking to myself too. Right? I'm talking now to myself. I'm talking about myself as well. But really and truly, we really have to give ourselves some credit for the work that we are doing. If you have any questions, because I've been just yapping away here, if you have any questions about building your brand and wanting to gain some clarity, then I want you to drop that in the chat, drop it in the comments, because I want to answer your questions about building your brand. Before we wrap, I have to share. So I am doing the Build Your Brand Sprint, Build Your Brand Live Sprint, March 10 to March 14. And I'm bringing it up on my screen so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. So if you see me keep looking, you know. All right, let me bring it up. Let me bring this up for you guys. Let me check my chat. Let me see who is joining. If you're joining, tell me where you're joining from. I'd love to hear. All right. So this is the Build Your Brand Live 5-day sprint, and it's a live training. You will get access to the replay for 30 days. And what you're getting when you join me 5 days is that you're getting a clear step-by-step system to build your brand foundation, so you can go out and start showing up, right? Without feeling overwhelmed and start, so you can start showing up with confidence. Because that's a big thing, right? You can't build a brand and not be confident about showing up. And it's, as I said, 5 days for the week. Live on Zoom. You get access to me, right? And the early bird is 77 USD. The regular price, it goes to the regular price of 97 USD on March 1st. So I've really just made this as, I don't want to say affordable, but I've made it, probably I can say affordable or accessible enough for women entrepreneurs who are building this brand on their own and want some guidance. You're doing it in a space of a community. So I know you're talented. I know sometimes you say you don't know where to start. I know you might even be saying, boy, Carey-Lee, I'm in the ideation stage. I'm not so sure. this is for you as well. Here's what you'll build in 5 days: brand clarity, visual identity, a brand kit, launch strategy, and I have broken it down on this so you can see exactly what I'm talking about here, right? And the link is in the description. So this is what we have. I see some people here with me live. I'd love for you to ask many questions if you do have any. And I just want to just remind you who this is for. So if you're just starting out and you don't know where to begin, this is for you. If you're overwhelmed by all the information online, you're tired of watching multiple YouTube videos, this is for you. If you're tired of doing it alone, or maybe you spend so many hours in Canva trying to create a graphic and it's still not working, this is for you. If you're tired of just figuring it out alone, this is for you, right? So this brand sprint, Build Your Brand Sprint Live, is for women entrepreneurs who are tired of doing it alone and want to build their brand foundation. All right. And like I said, I've made the early bird available and accessible to you for up until February 28th. So I'm sticking around a little bit for some question and answers before I wrap up. Right? So it was just really a pleasure for me to share with you a bit about my brand journey in terms of how I built 3 successful brands, what I did, what worked, what didn't work. And if you realize the common thing that I talked about here that didn't work was me trying to do everything alone. And because I was trying to do everything alone, because I allowed pride to get in the way, I really aborted what I was doing because I wasn't asking for help, and also because I spent a lot of time wasting time, probably even wasted resources, lost some amounts of confidence along the way. Because really and truly, when you're building something and trying to figure it out alone, and it really feels like it's not working, it can get very daunting, especially if you don't have someone walking with you to say, hey, this is just a part of the journey, you know, it's going to get better. When you have someone there walking with you, it feels so much better. I'm not saying it's easier, but it feels so much better. And one of the best things that has happened for me over the last year, especially as I transitioned into full-time entrepreneurship, was just having, I would say, a coach who really guided me as I was making that transition. I'm still in the transition phases. So I would share with this coach, like, hey, boy, I don't know if the entrepreneurship something for me. Because guys, I'm not going to act like everything is all rosy over here. I would literally just send a message or say, hey, can you take a phone call? I would share those really deep things like, listen, I'm not sure. And they would reassure me, Carey-Lee, this is part of the journey. Is it going to decide to stick with it, or you just, abort the mission because you're not willing to stick it out? And, building a brand, it might not feel so much like that. But when you start building and you start growing, or you're putting in all this work and it feels like nothing is working, it really makes sense to have someone working alongside you. So like I said, for the brand, Build Your Brand Live, 5-day sprint, I'm helping you to build that brand foundation. I really want you to go back and watch the 2 previous videos on building your brand roadmap. I want you to go back, and I'd love for you to watch that video on the 90-day brand reset, right? So let me share that on my screen so you can see what I'm referring to here, right? And these will be linked in the description. So it's the 90-day brand reset, 3 questions you should answer before you build a brand. And I also covered a brand building roadmap. All of these are linked in the description. And tonight is pretty much the final night where I'm sharing my journey of really building 3 successful brands. I talked about what worked and what completely failed. And I just thank you for being here. And again, I am seeing some comments, and I hope, okay, I'm seeing a question here. I love this. Let me just add this to my screen here. As it pertains to building my brand, how do I ensure that I build my brand as it reflects my idea and purpose of creating it? All right. So one of the first things I like to say when you're building your brand, right? Oftentimes when we're building something, We don't even think about brand. We think about business. Let's put that out there. The first thing we think about when we're building is that, or we're creating anything, is a business. How can I make some money? Right? And when we're thinking about making some money, one of the things is that if you're not mindful, you just work with anybody who you get. Right? You're like, okay, I am starting this business where I am, let me give an example, a wellness brand, right? You're like, anybody who wants to be better in their health, I'm targeting them. And that can work for a certain time, but it's not long term. It's not sufficient. And if you're only thinking about a hustle, sure, it can work. But if you're thinking about something sustainable, guess what you need to do? You need to sit down first. What am I building? Is it a wellness brand? Great. What type of wellness brand? Who are you targeting? Are you targeting women? Okay. What type of woman? What is her lifestyle? What is her lifestyle like? What is she likely to spend on? Right? What is the maximum amount of money she's willing to invest in whatever you're serving or selling? That is how detailed you have to get, right? So when you're building your brand, you have to ensure it reflects your idea or the purpose behind it by first knowing who you're building it for and why. You see that why? Very important. Very important, but it's oftentimes that foundational part that will be why you're building it. If your sole purpose is to make money, I'm telling you, it's not going to last for a very long time. And I'm saying that without apology. It's not going to last a very long time because you'll always be chasing the money wherever you go. So you're all over the place, right? So start with that. Why you're building it, who you're building it for. Then you're better able to craft your offers, craft your services around that person, because guess what? You understand the pain points. You understand what their needs are. You understand what they want. You understand, so boy, if it's a gym, right? Wellness brand, if it's a gym, you know, so January, the gym is going to be full. What does that mean? You create an offer to attract the people to come to your gym. Yes, naturally, they would probably come to your gym, but how can you make your gym or your offer stand out against the competitors? That is one of the things. When you understand your audience or who you're targeting, then you can say, okay, I know that during the summertime is when our more people will come, or at a particular time is when it's going to fall off. There's going to be a dip. So here's what I'm going to have to create: a specific type of offer that will pull them in at this specific time, right? So these are the things that help you to create a brand that reflects your idea and also the purpose. So the purpose is also the story behind it, the story of transformation, the story of I said that transformation. What is that transformational journey? It could be your own journey. If you started a wellness brand, what is your journey? Did you start it because you had some health issues? Did you start it because you probably started eating a particular way? And because you started eating a particular way, you decided to start creating your own products. You created your own products. It helped you to transform your life. You got better health. Those are the things that help to build the purpose behind your brand. And then you start thinking about, how can I use this story and create offers? How can I use this story to build up my service? All right. So I've said a mouthful there, and I really hope you have gained some clarity on what I was sharing. All right. So thank you so much for joining this live. I didn't even have a time limit in mind, to be honest, but I really enjoyed just sharing a bit about my journey of building a brand. And I really hope you take something away from it. And if there's anything I would say that I would do differently, it is to definitely have that foundation built. And I have that brand sprint coming up March 10 to 14, and the early bird ends on February 28. So let's chat in the comments and have a great evening.